Let's go back now to Las Vegas, where the fate of a former public administrator charged with murder will soon be in the hands of a jury. Prosecutors say that the defendant, Robert Tellis, killed longtime journalist Jeff German over articles he wrote exposing turmoil in Tellis's political office in 2022. Tellis maintains his innocence, claiming that he was framed and that evidence against him was planted by the police and prosecutors. Let's get you back into court for the state's rebuttal closing argument.
Well, it's been 2 weeks. You guys have heard a lot of evidence. We thank you for your patience, and I will try to be as brief as I can. But as you've seen, with witness after witness after witness, the evidence is absolutely clear. The defendant murdered Jeff German. He murdered him because Jeff's writing destroyed his career. It destroyed his reputation. It threatened probably his marriage. It exposed things that even he admitted he did not want the public to know. And he did it because Jeff wasn't done writing. He was informed on August 8th that a records request was being made by Mr. German long after he had lost the race, well into his lame duck remaining administration as a PA. And he learns that Jeff wants to write more. And when he learns about the subject of it, it's not about him and Alicia. It's not about him and Rita. It's not about anybody except him and Roberta. And what you see unfolds over the course of a month. We learn from his phone expert that he shut off all location data, even though that phone, as we learn from his expert, 13 years of location data magically disappears for the month of August. Why? Because of the August 8th email. He's over it. He's building a reconnaissance case. He starts to go on to Google Maps. He starts doing surveillance at Popeyes. He's using the power of his office and their computer software to find private details about Jeff so he can culminate in murdering him. And that's what he does. But as I've told many, many juries, especially in the last few years, it is really, really hard to plan the perfect murder in the digital age because you leave too many breadcrumbs behind. And he's no dummy. He's actually quite smart. He is thoughtful. But you will see during this rebuttal, there are mistakes that he makes. And there are things that he simply cannot account for that when a police starts to look into an investigation and deploys the tools that the police have at their disposal, it uncovers the inconsistencies. It uncovers his mistakes. But I gotta start with what he got up and told us about, the alleged conspiracy. When Mr. Tellis got up here over the course of, I think it was 3 days and testified, it was remarkable what he had to say, and not in a good way. His testimony was incredible, and not in a good way. He explained, or at least attempted to, explain this conspiracy. What we learned over the course of the 3 days, and actually the course of this trial over 3 weeks, is the conspiracy grew, and it grew, and it grew. Who's exactly in it? It starts with Compass, nebulously Compass Realty. We learned that Adam Fenn can't be ruled out, right? Because he makes donations to Rita Reid. Cindy Sauerland gets mentioned at one point. In some of those briefings, you'll see her name is mentioned. She's a source of consternation for the defendant. It expands to the old guard, as they coin that phrase. Rita Reid, Alicia Goodwin are all part of this, right? The conspiracy, and let's remember, it's a conspiracy to murder Jeff Gehrman. We then learn it expands to Derek Jappy. He's in on it as well. When he testified, he's not really able to link up why Derek Jappy would want to help Rita Reed or Alicia Goodwin or Compass Realty or Adam Fenn or Cindy Sauerland. That testimony is lacking. A lot of times when I pressed him, and I pressed him, and I'm going to explain to you one of the reasons why I cross-examined him so hard. When you stand on the stand under oath and you make allegations about businesses in our community, government service workers, and the police department, we deserve answers. I genuinely wanted to know, how is all this connecting? Explain it to me. And respectfully, Mr. Tellis absolutely failed in doing so. It didn't make sense. And that is one of your instructions, which is to use your common sense. It's got to make sense, and it actually has to link up with evidence. But a lot of times, the most common answer I would get back from Mr. Tellis was simply, well, you know, no, I never saw Jappy take a bribe, but I think that. It was a lot of times it's like, that's just my gut feeling. That's my opinion. That's not evidence. That is not evidence. But yet, it was Mr. Tellis's answer for almost everything when it came to this conspiracy. But let's continue. It stretches out to include Cliff Mogg, Justine Gaddis, the entire DNA lab. He said there were also patrol officers in it. I asked him which patrol, I don't know which ones. And then it literally culminates with Steve Wolfson, like the DA. It culminated with him. He can't quite link it up, but he threw that name out there. And here's the thing that struck me when I took over this case. I would submit to most people, probably before ever hearing about this case, had no idea what a public administrator was. He is not a U.S. senator. He is not a governor. He is not a congressperson. He is a duly elected official who manages an office of approximately 8 people. And their job is to assist people who pass away, who don't leave a will and leave property behind.
Still with us, Casey Early and Bruce Rosenberg. These are the final thoughts, rebuttal argument by the state. Bruce, start with you. Tell me your final thoughts, please.
Well, I think that the prosecution is doing a good job of rebutting the defense's closing arguments. I think that the defense has a real uphill battle here. The reality is that all the evidence taken as a whole is pointing towards the fact that the defendant committed murder. So I don't believe that as good as defense counsel's closing argument was, that it's going to overcome the reasonable doubt standard. And I think the prosecution is going to be successful here.
Yeah, and you may be right, because I do agree the defendant didn't necessarily make sense in his version of facts. Casey, tell us your thoughts, please.
Not at all. And you know, while I'm listening to this rebuttal, although the defense attorney in this case reminded the jury that the prosecution is going to get up, and if there's any unanswered questions, rely on your memory and the evidence as presented, I can't help but look at his face, because there's some points that the prosecutor is making, and he's shaking his head, he's mouthing, and he's saying that didn't happen. You're guilty, and there will be a guilty verdict that comes down.
Yeah, I agree with you. I noticed his facial expressions as well. Thank you so much, Casey Early, for joining us. Bruce Rosenberg, you'll be sticking around. Coming up next, Michael Ayala joining me for more closing arguments in the investigative reporter murder trial. Plus, Court TV's Kelly Craft joins us live for an update.